What's up guys, welcome back to another GGF video, and today we'll be taking a look at the Lian Li DK-05 chassis. Now this is a dual PC case. You've probably seen the time-lapse build. It is a monstrosity. I did build two high-end systems in this chassis, but first I want to cover all the details, the ins and outs, the monitor stands, all the peripherals I used, and some little extras I did, so let's jump in. But before that, this video is brought to you by CDKdeals. Head to CDKdeals.com where you can find the best prices on official Microsoft software and games from the likes of Steam, Origin, Uplay and more. For example, you can find Windows 10 Pro OEM for the lowest price around. Simply buy now and apply the GGF20 coupon code for an additional 20% off. Payment via PayPal is also an option I'm glad to see, and once completed, you'll have access directly to the keys via your accounts and email. To activate your Windows, simply start searching for activation and click the first option. Click change product, paste your new key, and you're good to go. The DK-05F is Lian Li's current flagship dual desk PC. They also have a single PC desk, the DK-04F. The desk comes in two very large boxes with some assembling required. One box contains the main desk itself, while the other contains everything else like the legs, electronics and screws. And talking about screws, there are a lot. I was a bit skeptical at first to just how sturdy the assembled unit was going to be. The whole desk is from 3mm brushed aluminum with steel legs, and all comes together with over 20 M4 screws for each side. Assembling with one person can be a bit tricky as the legs kind of bend into the top for a snug fit. I found it best to place the top of the desk on a large table with one side hanging over to work on securing the leg, then doing the same for the other leg. After the desk is together, I then moved on to the electronic lift height assembly, which was pretty straightforward. I did find the manual very clear and had no issues at all. Everything is covered from setting the desk up, connecting all the internal cabling, cooling, storage support, RGB control, and programming the lift height controls. The desk itself comes in at 1400 long by 780 deep, and the height is adjustable from 690 to 1175, which definitely makes it the largest PC case I've ever checked out. Here is a real-time shot of how fast the desk can go up. All up with the glass installed, I'd say the desk weighs roughly 70 kilos, and that's without any hardware installed. Lian Li state you can jam the desk with an additional 80 kilograms of hardware and peripherals. This sounds like a challenge. Being a Lian Li flagship chassis, the exterior is top notch, surrounded with brushed aluminum. Front I/O is located both far left and far right to cover the two systems. The primary system, being the right side, has 4 USB 3.0 Type A ports, audio ports, power button and a USB 3.1 Type C port. However, the secondary side, being the left, only has 2 USB 3.0 ports, audio ports and power button, but no USB Type C. I really wish both sides were the same, which will give the user which side they could have as their primary system. Above the right side's I/O is probably the nicest control panel I've seen on a case to date. These aluminum controls control the fans, RGB and glass control. Yes, that's right, glass control. The desk is pre-installed with privacy glass. With the push of a button, this can be changed to transparent or opaque. I'll show this in action and the other buttons later once hardware is installed in the chassis. Moving inside the DK-05, we see two identical layouts. Each side contains the same motherboard support, cooling support and hard drive support. I'm glad this is the case and not set up with a primary and secondary side where one featured more and so on. This means I can go balls out on both sides of the desk in terms of hardware. Motherboard support is up to eATX, and I doubt you'll be going with an MITX setup in this chassis. This tray is removable and I found it best to route all your PCU cables to roughly where they need to go, then drop the motherboard tray back in. GPU length is more than enough with roughly 390mm if installing a front radiator and res together. Without a horizontal front res, GPU support is even longer. Storage is decent, with each side accommodating 4 3.5-inch hard drives or 4 2.5-inch SSDs right up the front via dual hard drive cages. For my build, I did order some longer 90cm SATA cables to make for cleaner routing, just so I could go around the front fans rather than over the top. jumping straight into water cooling, and you really wouldn't build this desk any other way. The main radiator locations are two 480s up the front and two 360s in the middle, so each system or side can take a 480 and 360, which should be enough for most high-end builds. The rear can also support one 240 and two 140s, but I would prefer to use this area for something like an FLT res. For those wanting to run all-in-one coolers, only one spot I found would allow for the tubing to reach, and that was the left side middle 360 location. All others were too far away. For radiator sizes, the front can take up to 60mm thick radiators with the top glass installing fine. EK have released a mammoth dual FLT setup specifically for the DK-05, where they run the full length of the desk on top of the 480 radiators. If going with this setup, you'll need to downgrade the radiators to 14mm thick to allow for this extra room. For my build, I used EK PE 480 radiators. The center 360 radiator locations are unrestricted, and you'll have no issues running 60mm thick radiators here. In my build, I went with EK XE 360s, but the rear fans had to be removed if using the front EK distros. For a build not using the EK distro plates, you'll need to find other areas for reservoirs. I feel above the center radiators or FLTs in the rear fan locations would be the best spots. All radiator locations bar the rear have removable brackets to allow you to install the radiator outside the desk and then drop it back in. The front and center radiator locations all have magnetic dust filters that actually attach from outside the desk. This saves having to remove the glass for removing and cleaning filters. The desk does come pre-installed with 12 Lian Li fans, but no doubt if you're spending this much on the desk, you'll be swapping these out. Lian Li have included a fan controller in the center up the front to help cable manage the 8 front fans. The included top cover is a nice touch, and I feel this empty area up here will be good for RGB controllers and so on. One feature I really liked with the desk is Montiro Arm Support. Now, you don't want to be removing monitors every time you need to access the hardware, and you can't just secure a bracket to the glass. Lian Li have added 3 small 55x120 LCD brackets that secure to the back of the desk and stick out away from the glass. This enables you to mount a clamp style monitor arm. A fourth larger bracket 125x115 is also supplied for beefier monitor arms. I will be using at least 2 of these in my setup. Now the build video is quite long purely because the filling did take quite a while for both systems. If you had seen it, you can probably skip ahead to the conclusion of this video, but if you've seen it or you haven't seen it, you want to see it again, let's check it out. Now just a few things I want to cover before I wrap this video up. A few things I was asked in the video is how is legroom under the desk? Now it's nothing new that these type of desk case PCs, there's always been an issue with legroom underneath. I think the traditional ones always started with just a flat base, whereas this, the recent DK series now has a slanted sort of base. As you can see, it's very thin at the top and then it gets bigger for your hardware. Well, that is solely done so you don't have to sort of reach over and arch to your hardware. They've tried to minimize the depth at the front and then maximize it at the back. Now for me, this desk I tested is pretty good. Now I knew it was going to be fine for me because basically I have chicken legs, I'm very small, I'm very skinny. I knew from day one it wasn't going to be an issue. I am relatively tall, so there are two factors you have to note for this. It's not just how sort of big, stocky you are, it's also how tall you are, how long your knees jut out. I did find a few times if I slide in a hurry, I will bang my knees on those radiator grills underneath. So you have to bear in mind with that. I am about 6 foot, so keep note on that. Now for the DK-05, it'll be the same on the DK-04. The desk has 170 millimeters from the front to where that slant starts, and then it goes down to 330 millimeters. Now for me, I can get pretty much straight to the bottom. As I said, my legs aren't very big. I'm not scraping it at the top. Now for you to test that, just go to your standard desk at home, get comfortable, start using it, and when you feel comfortable, just measure how far your legs protrude inside the desk towards the back. Measure that, and if you find out it's something like going to be 400, something more than that, you will have issues on this desk. Now also found out height was a little bit of an issue with chairs as well, especially something like this Noble chair that I'm using here. Standard desk height is roughly 730 high. I found with this Noble chair at its lowest, so this is lowest armrest down, lowest seat down, it did bang the front of the desk. It wouldn't go under. I had to lift the desk up via the controls to roughly 750, so another 20 mils, and then I could get the armrest under. And for me, it just felt a little bit comfortable not having the armrest under the desk. I'm not sure about how you use your system at home, but when I was gaming, when I was testing the system, I did want to have the armrest slightly under the desk, and that's just how I use it. And then once I did get comfortable, I did measure the gap between my sort of chest towards the front of the desk, and it ranged between 150 to 200 millimeters in the depth from me to the front of the case here. So if you find out that you at home, it's much smaller, and then you might have an issue because your legs will be much further in, and they may even go to the center of the desk, which in that case, you'd have to have it really high, and then it might just get a little bit awkward. Now, in terms of the buttons on the front, it's a little bit tricky here. I did want to go into details with these, but to be honest, I'm not using the fan control, I'm not using the RGB control, only because it's really set up to have a primary and secondary system, and I'm not really using it like this. I'm using it as one editing system, which is this one here. And then I have the gaming system over there. So I will use probably both system 50-50. So I don't really have a primary system. So I just decided to avoid the fan control, avoid the RGB control. It's all being done by software, by each individual system. But in terms of that, the functionality of these two controls work really well. The RGB works well, there's heaps of modes. It's basically the same as standard RGB control on most Lian Li cases. And then the fan control, you got like your low, medium, high, and full speed as well. But all these have motherboard input as well, so you don't have to just run it on this controller. You can run it to this controller and then also to your motherboard, and you can override it that way as well. Now, another neat little feature was, you may have seen in the time-lapse build, is the whole top of this glass is sort of the same as a privacy glass. It can go clear and then it can go more opaque like it is now. Now, if I hold this G button down, do be careful, it is right near the power button. I don't know how many times I pressed it and I have shut down this PC, so it is right over here. And then if you do press it, it does make it go clear. I just made it opaque again, and then it does go clear. On film, it does look a little bit weird. In person, it is much clearer. On film, it looks a little bit hazy. It looks a little bit three-dimensional. I can only assume the way it looks like that. Even in person, it's a little bit three-dimensional, but it's not too bad. If you look closely on the edge, there are 3 layers to it. So you got your glass on the top, glass on the bottom, and there is that layer in between, because I believe how it works is you are putting an electric current through it, and then everything aligns to make it go clear, and then when it's off, everything just scatters, and that's how you get the privacy effect. But I personally really do like it. I do like it when, I'm actually thinking now, I like it more when the glass is non-see-through. It gives you that, I don't know, that cool effect. Brightness on your screens isn't so bad. I do have a shot, it's hard to pick up on camera, just to show you the reflection with the glass being able to see through and the glass not being able to see through, and it just gives you that really nice glow, especially if you have some nice colors set up. Like I've got the pink and then I got the blue, and I think they contrast well together. Now my main issue with the glass here to be controlled, same as with your RGB and your fan control being on this side, the primary system is the only system that controls the glass turning on and off. So if you have this system off, I'm gaming, this glass will be off. I won't be able to see inside at all until I turn this PC on. And I thought, well, that's kind of a pretty big deal, because for me, I'm going to be using both the systems, say 50-50. I would like to be able to just check inside if the glass is off. So what I ended up doing, the system does take two SATA power to control all of these controls. I just bought a AC to DC Molex little power brick, and then I just ran that outside the case, and that just plugs into AC power. So these controls are on all the time, but that's not so bad for me because I always turn my computers off at the wall. Here in Australia, we guys have all of our outlets, which you call in the US, they have switches on them. So I do turn them off at the wall, and then that'll turn the whole system off. But yeah, just something to note. I really wish they could have done it the same way as the lift height, because this is external power. This is AC straight to the wall. If the privacy glass had its own power source, just so you didn't have to run it off the primary system, like you could route it all the way along the desk to your secondary system, but then again, it's only one system controlling it, which I didn't really like. But yeah, I got around that by running that Molex adapter. Now, one thing I did do to this desk, I don't have it set up now. You may have seen some photos I posted around. I am going to use this as my personal setup. I have been using it quite a bit already because I wanted to give you the best feedback I could on this, because not many people really review these desks. I think the overall challenge is quite complex. Like I've been spending weeks on this. The fact that this thing weighs 100 kilos, for me to move this around, I've been using another lift height desk. I lift this desk up a bit, I slide another lift height desk under it, and then I jack that one up like a forklift. That one's on wheels, and then I can move it around my studio. So it is a bit of a mission, but I wanted to bring you guys this content, just something a little bit different. And if any of you guys are interested in this type of chassis. So being 1400 lengthwise from say left to right, I didn't think was long enough for one system. Oh, sorry, two systems, two sets of keyboards, two sets of mice, and so on. A lot of people said, why don't you get a KVM? Well, I didn't really want to be flicking between them. Sometimes I like to be gaming and then I can be editing at the same time, and I didn't want to be flicking switches and so on. But as you can see in the bit of the B-roll in the time-lapse build, it was quite cramped. So there were two ways I went about this. I tried extending the glass. It's pretty hard to get one sheet of glass that is bigger. My aim was to get about 2 meters or 2000 millimeters, which I think is about right for a standard desk to fit two systems on there. Bear in mind, you don't have your computer chassis on the desktop, it's just your monitors, so you do save a bit of room. So I was trying to look for roughly 2 meters. So I went down the road of tackling something like pool fences, toughened glass pool fences. They were about 8 millimeters thick. I got two halves, I could put them on top, and that gave me the 2 meters all up. And there was a slight overhang. It wasn't anything serious, like it would topple, anything would fall over. Maybe if someone went up and sat on the end, it probably would. That wasn't too bad. It did look a bit weird because pool fencing, the glass was 100% see-through. You could see through everything in the chassis. You could see all the screw holes and all that. So it did look a little bit odd. It was a little bit wider, but it did work. And I think having the half on each side, it meant I could pull just one half off. If I needed to maintain one side at a time, I could, and that system would have worked. Now the second approach I went down, and the one I'll probably keep, is I added little brackets on the side here. I'll throw some B-roll shots up, and then I went to IKEA and got some just some shelves. So these little brackets just clip on, and then they extend out. So these shelves are 300 each. So that'll give me 600 extra on top of the 1400 that gives me my 2 meters. And it makes a world of difference having 300 millimeters on each end. Now it is a bit tricky if you've ever joined two desks together and you have a mouse pad going over it. I did have to sort of get it perfect by little bits of cardboard underneath. But once I got it perfect with the mouse pad, I could not feel the mouse moving over it. On the gaming side, it was okay because the mouse pad sits in the middle, the keyboard sits on the left. For the editing side, which is this one, the mouse pad was pretty much bang over the join. But once I got it right, it was super secure. There was no flex at all, and I could not feel the mouse moving over the mouse pad at all. So I'll probably stick to that approach. I do think it does look pretty good. Now you can go to IKEA, get different types of little shelf tops, different grains, different colors. I went with a dark black that has a bit of a wood grain, and I think it does give it sort of that executive appeal look to it, and it looks quite nice. Now moving on to just something a little bit different I want to cover. A lot of people brought this up in the time-lapse build, is all the peripherals I use. Now yes, Logitech did sponsor this setup, and I wanted to go down that route to try and lock down a sponsor for this build so I could have all the peripherals as one setup. And I really wanted to go that extra step rather than just showing you the desk itself with no monitors and no peripherals, no nothing. I wanted to give you an idea of the size of the desk and how it all looks with monitors connected and so on. So I went down to the good guys at M-Wave, hooked me up with Logitech, and they sponsored all this gear. Because a few of you guys said, oh, well, you've got the expensive creative sound card on each system. Why are you using a USB headset? Well, that was only because I wanted to have two different types of sets of the Logitech setup. I wanted a full G Pro setup, which is there, or the G Pro X, which is the Logitech sort of professional gaming side, and that was what I used on the gaming setup. And then I wanted the Logitech, the more sort of familiar G series, like the G915 and so on. So I just want to run through the gear I did use. On the editing side, I went with the G915 wireless gaming keyboard. Now I have been using this, I've had all this gear for a very long time. I've had this desk since probably mid last year, so I've had plenty of time to test it. For me, I went with the G915 on the editing side because I feel it's more suited on there. It's a larger keyboard, it's got the numpad, it's got great battery life, and I did try for gaming, but that type of setup with the low profile chiclet keys just isn't for me. I did find them a little bit too close together for gaming, but on the editing side of things, I have been using it for editing and it does work really well, and it's got those multimedia keys as well, which is a nice touch, and that volume rocker is really nice. Now I did use the G PowerPlay mouse mat on both systems. It's pretty much a no-brainer to go with that. Of course I wanted to go with wireless mice. I wanted to eliminate all the cable clutter as much as possible on this setup, only because I just didn't want lots of cables running over everywhere. So the only two cables really are from the mouse pads, the keyboard on the gaming side, and then the headset on the gaming side. Moving on to the G502 was a wireless mouse on the editing side. Now it's kind of hard trying to determine which side to use this on, because technically they can be used for both sides, and I may switch these in the future, but this is the sides that I just use them for in the time-lapse build. And the G502, it does have plenty of extra buttons, so I can set those to macros and so on for my Adobe editing software, and it does have the function to lock the scroll wheel to clicks, or it does have the freewheel option on the mouse wheel, and I think that would work better on the editing side where I can scrub through footage and so on. And then we have the G935 wireless gaming headset. Probably not so much to do with an editing system. It is wireless, it's very gamery style, but when it came to a system like that, I wanted to keep the G Pro setup on the gaming side, and then the wireless setup on the editing side. But in saying that, I do have the Creative 89 on both sides. It means I could always just unplug the G Pro, plug it into the editing side, and then I'll get that decent bump up in the audio using the wired G Pro wireless. Now moving on to the gaming side, of course went with the G Pro X gaming keyboard, which is this one here. I wanted to go with a TKL because I knew from the start I was going to have limited desk space. At that time when I was planning, I wasn't thinking of extending the desk, but in saying that, I think a TKL is probably the right choice for a gaming setup. It's relatively small, it's got all your RGB and so on, and it does have the removable switches. I of course like my clicky, these are the blue. The G915 was also the clicky, and as I said, these have the removable switches, not just the keycaps, the switches themselves, so I could go down the route to playing around with different colors and so on for that. Once again, the G PowerPlay mousepad for that, that'll keep all those mice charged. And then we have the G Pro gaming headset, which is this one here. This is a really good headset. Now I've been using a mod mic for a very long time, and then I started to use the this headset and also the the other headset for the editing, the G935, just in gaming and on Discord. And some of the mates I was on, they're like, oh, did you change your headset? And I'm like, why? And I was kind of expecting them to say, oh, it's probably not as good. Now, this isn't to sort of put Logitech down, but I've always highly regarded the mod mics as being very, very good microphones, because that's what they specialize in. But the guys on Discord were like, no, you sound much, much better. It's much clearer. So I was quite impressed with that. And I'm actually thinking of picking up the wireless version. When I did this contract, only the wired G Pro was available. So I'm really keen just to buy the wireless version of these myself, because I have been using the G935s for a bit of gaming, and I've never really used wireless headsets before. So I think just the freedom, especially on a sit-stand desk, I've been gaming a bit standing up, and it just feels naturally to walk around while I'm in queue, while I'm waiting for games to load, and having that freedom with a wireless headset just makes that a very obvious choice for that. And then the G Pro wireless mouse, which is that one there, very, very good competitive game mouse. And I'm actually also thinking of picking up the G Pro X, which is their new one, because I'm all about the latest hardware. I like to test it out, and I've been really happy with that one there as well. That's basically a lot I just covered through there. Kind of went off a bit track with the Logitech, but I wanted to give them a shout out. Thank you for sponsoring all of that gear. One last thing I want to cover, some people mentioned, was the monitor arm I use. This is the Silverstone. I'm not sure which model. They have a heap of them. I will throw it up somewhere in the video for you guys to check out. It is a double arm. It has a payload of 10 kilograms per monitor. I actually think this monitor, the Acer X27, is heavier than the Acer X38, although this one is 38 inch, this is 27. This one just feels very, very solid. And it was a no-brainer to use the X27 for the editing, and then the ultra wide 38 for the gaming. In terms of the stand support, I covered this towards the end of the review. It was a bit flimsy. I'll get this out of the way. It was a bit flimsy when I first set it up, only because I'll get some close-up shots of this. Your monitor arm is meant to go half on the bracket, then half onto the glass. Now for me, I didn't really like that option going onto the glass. It means how are you meant to remove the glass if you wanted to do maintenance and so on. You do have to stick a rubber pad down, so it does secure it, it does stop it from scratching, and that is to eliminate any wobble in the stand. Now for me, the Silverstone bracket is very, very low profile, which I do like. It doesn't stick out onto the desk, but in saying that, it didn't go over how it's meant to run, so I couldn't test out the full stability of these brackets from Lian Li. I could only test it in its not so perfect solution, and for me, there was quite a lot of wobble because it was just suspended on this bracket. It didn't have that extra support, because the back it secures into is where those fans come out of inside the desk, so there's not a whole lot of support, and whenever I bump the desk, they would move quite a lot. Now when I bump the desk, it's really just monitor arm, natural monitor arm support, because I have added my extra brackets. I added a right angle on the back, and then I added another supporting bar. Now I reached out to Lian Li about this, and they said, yep, it is a bit hard because there's going to be so many different solutions out there, so many different monitor arms. It's going to be hard to get a solution perfect for you. But in saying that, I still think it's pretty good that they have these options out there. I'm not sure if anyone's going to go as crazy as doing a 38 and a 27, but just keep in mind that there may be a bit of wobble if you do not go onto the glass like I have done. Now, lastly, you probably want to know the price of the DK-05. So you're looking at $36.99, or we'll just say an even $3,700. That is Australian. It is at M-Wave. It might be order in, because I'm pretty sure they're not going to stock their shelves with something this large. But in saying that, it's kind of a tricky one to sum up. I personally do like it, but you're going to need or want the hardware to match. That's why I completely went balls out. I'm making it my dual personal system. I wasn't going to just build it to review it and then not use it again. I wanted to build it and get excited about keeping it. That's why I've got this passion of building this really high-end system. I got to use every nook and cranny of this desk. I got to test it out. I got to drill into the sides to add these shelves. So in saying that, if you were going to use it as a personal system, $3,700, a decent lift stand desk is probably going to cost you about $1,000. Now this does have a huge payload of about 80 kilos on top of the already 60-70 kilos of the desk, so you're probably not going to max that out. And then you've also got the transparent glass. So I did look at ordering extra glass for this. It wasn't going to be the privacy glass, just a normal bit of toughened glass that came out 300 each side. Was going to cost about 400 Australian dollars. So I cannot imagine how much this transparent glass, the special effect it does is going to cost. Now it does have little contacts that it has to sit on, so when you do put the glass on, just make sure it does sit on those contacts. So yeah, so $3,700, once you break it all down, the cost of the two cases, the lift height, the privacy glass, doesn't seem to be as bad as a lot of other luxury high-end cases out there, and then that relates to roughly $2,000 US. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video all up. I just want to thank all the sponsors who helped out with this. I want to thank you guys for watching. It has been a long video, and I want to thank Lian Li for sending this out and check out, and see you next time.